Assalamu alaikum, Bushra. Inshallah, you're doing well today.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, I am. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing very well. And I'm Jazakallah khair for wanting to dive into this topic a little bit more. This episode, inshallah, we'll be talking about, obviously, we're talking about the Muslim marriage crisis. And we're wondering, is liberalism and secularism to blame for this crisis? Can you share a little bit about your thoughts on this?
Yeah, of course. So I've noticed that a lot of Muslims want to get married, but they're unable to find somebody with a similar mindset. There's like a mindset mismatch, both in terms of religiosity and gender roles. So I think the liberalization of Islam is a big one. Like Muslims wanting to follow a liberalized version of Islam, they cherry pick the parts that they like and they leave out the ones that they don't,
Right.
And quite often they'll like twist and turn the deen to like suit their own like agendas. And I think they forget that Islam is first and foremost submission to the will of your creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So I think that is it. And secondly, I'd say the influence of external ideologies like feminism and red pill. I think that's another huge one.
Okay.
Because both of them are man-made and inherently flawed, right? In some way or the other. They're not the divine decree. They're not the divine decree.
Right.
So I think feminism especially has resulted in a deviation from gender roles, right?
Yes.
Tells women that you don't need to obey your husband or look after your family and kids. Like being a mom and wife isn't enough. You need to do more.
Right.
You need to be stuck in a corporate, 9 to 5 job.
Be a boss babe.
Be a boss babe. Like you can have kids in your 40s. It's okay.
Oh gosh. Yeah. What a disaster. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what they don't understand is, yes, you can have kids in your 40s. Like my mom had, like my youngest brother in her 40s, but it was a really complicated pregnancy, right?
Yeah.
That huge health risks posed to both the mother and the baby.
Correct.
And having the kid is one thing, but you want to be around to actually raise them. You want to have energy to like look after your kids and maybe see your grandkids.
Right.
So like I said, it's not just about having those kids. And I'm not saying that all women who work or do a 9 to 5 are inherently like they're not feminists by default. Like I know some of them don't have an option, right? But however, that 9 to 5 mindset, like it will like catch up on you and it will like take a huge toll on your health, It's terrible for female fertility, all that stress, and your cortisol levels are through the roof. And like even after you have kids, if you think that like looking after the kids, doing a 9 to 5, like cooking, cleaning, and all of that, like I just think it's too much,
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Like you're neither here nor there, like you're stretched thin.
So. Yes, absolutely. And also, I realized that in my own life. My mother was a single mom for most of our lives growing up, and so she had to spend a lot of time both working and trying to be the mother and the father. And it really put her in a position of, being more masculine and sometimes where she had to take on that father role of discipline and ensuring that we were doing our homework and all of that stuff as well. And I feel like, it's such a disservice to women to expect them to be both roles and to work 9 to 5. I mean, at some point she was working 3 jobs, and so it's like, then basically my brother's raising me. So it really, being married to the right person, of course, is very, very important, but also this notion that the mom or the wife can just work a 9 to 5 or a 12-hour shift and then come home and then raise her babies well. Understatement of the century. Absolutely. And I think that one of the things that I noticed in, especially on social media, when they advocate for feminism is promiscuity. It's really pushed on young people today, unfortunately.
I mean, they sell promiscuity as promiscuity is somehow equivalent to freedom. Like you're just allowing a man who has not married you, who's not protecting or providing for you in any shape or form, and you're allowing him to have access to your body, and you're allowing him like you're just being a wife without being a wife, right? And people end up in these endless situationships for years. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying like that's not exactly relevant to like the Muslims, because. Right, but I mean, still, that kind of an ideology it does have a negative effect, and like I really want to focus on what you said earlier, like
Mm,
how women aren't feminine anymore and how men aren't masculine anymore. And I think
mhm.
that's another huge thing.
Yeah.
It's almost as if men and women have like exchanged roles, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think it's more prevalent in places like the United States, where I've spent most of my life, and in Canada. And you don't see that so much in Italy, where I am now. But I think that it's a shame because we're losing our feminine nature, and oftentimes men are denigrated in the West.
Yeah.
They are, they shouldn't protect and provide for their families. We're quote
Yeah.
unquote equal.
You know, like Ali, everybody has phones. Like you'd be surprised by how much the westernization of cultures, I see it happening all around me, right? And I'm
Right,
not
right.
based, so
Yeah,
like it's
yeah,
not just a
absolutely.
Western thing anymore, you know?
That's true.
Like,
Yeah, men are
and
feminists everywhere, I guess, unfortunately, which is
yeah, and like we like I think society as a whole has stopped valuing women for who
yeah,
they inherently are, which
right,
is why they feel pressurized or they feel the need to like do these other things because they feel like being a mom or being a wife is not enough. So
right.
like in a way, I don't like blame them for like giving into this pressure. I
Of course.
mean, especially if
Yeah,
you're like pushing this onto like impressionable minds from a
right,
very young age. You see it in like television series, you see it in schools. Like even
right.
my teachers used to talk about it. Like alhamdulillah, I didn't like fall prey to any of that because of my
Right.
parents, but like it's
Alhamdulillah.
definitely being pushed on very heavily.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also men are denigrated. Men are, they're not supposed to be aggressive in any way. They're not supposed to be masculine and strong. If you are, you're considered, right wing and dangerous and a threat to society. Well, we need strong men in our society.
Because
Yeah.
men being dangerous is a good thing
Yeah.
as long as it's like good men who are dangerous, you know? Because at
Right,
the
right,
end of the
right.
day, it's only the good, strong men who are gonna like protect us from
That's right.
the others, right?
Exactly.
Children to be safe, like men need to be strong.
Exactly. Exactly. We want men to be strong and be protective. And yeah, we want them to, think aggressive thoughts. Alhamdulillah. So that kind of brings me to the idea of the red pill community, which is very, very popular. And obviously feminism has been in the West and has been, now around the world, but since the 1900s. But the red community is pretty new.
It's relatively new, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the red pill community and how it might be influencing Muslim men?
I think any ideology that makes men or they turn men and women against each other, I think
Right.
that's like a big no in my book. Like we're
Right.
supposed to be on the same team. And I
Yes.
think initially the radical ideology started out as, you know, like I think it's a response to feminism first and foremost. So like
Yes.
I understand why it started. And initially it was about self-improvement and masculinity and all of that.
Mhm.
But like promiscuity is a huge part of it, you know? Like
Yes. 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 Yeah.
they complain about women being degenerate, but they're like contributing to the same problem.
Yeah. They're not sleeping with nobody. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, like that's not how a leader behaves, right?
No, that's true.
And like most of these red pill, like if you go to their like alpha male gurus, like if you go to their pages, all they do is like act bitter towards women all day, you know?
Yes. Yes.
And that's not like in line with Islam because
Mm,
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like he says that the believing men and women are allies of each other, you know,
correct.
like
Yeah.
we're supposed to be on the same team. And I think a lot of them just treat women horribly. Like I've seen the way they interact with them
Yeah.
online, and I think that's another one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen there's a red pill influencer. He's very, very popular on YouTube and on Instagram and generally on social media. And he advocates for his daughter to get married because he knows that he'll be protected and provided for, but he also advocates for his son to stay unmarried forever. And I thought, well, isn't that so strange? The hypocrisy there was not lost on me. So he wants to not protect and provide for the women he's sleeping with, and he wants to hoard his wealth and dole it out as he sees fit, which is very manipulative as well.
The way I think is like if you wouldn't want it to happen to your own daughter, like don't do it to somebody else's daughter, right?
Alhamdulillah.
And like and if you're talking about masculinity, like is that how an honorable man behaves?
Right.
And I think women, and I think both men and women need marriage, obviously, because that's how we make the
Babies.
relationship allow. But I think apart from that as well, you need like the safety and security that comes with marriage, you know? Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's a huge risk for
Yeah.
both the man and the woman, but more so for like the woman, because if you're not married and you have kids, and like what happens after that?
Right.
And so like there's this thing, you know, like where they're placing the entire burden of responsibility on women. Like I'm the alpha male, I'm the prize and whatnot.
Right.
And like so like there's definitely some similarities in feminism and red pill, like which make me feel like they're two sides of the same coin. For example, how like feminism says like you're a doormat if you look after your husband and your kids, and red
Right.
pill says, oh, if you treat your wife well, you're a simp, quote unquote, right?
Right. The
So
simp. Right.
yeah, like yeah. So I mean, so there's like things like that, and feminism obviously takes it a step forward because because it's aligned with liberalism, and it eventually takes you out of the fold of Islam.
Right.
But the thing is, like, we don't know how red pill is gonna look like 50, 60 years down the line,
Good
right?
point.
Like
Yeah.
as you said, it's relatively new, and as Muslims, like we have the best examples of masculinity within our faith. For example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, right? Like we don't need, like if we tell women that you don't need an external ideology, the deen is complete, and the same applies to men, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also, yeah, that's very, very interesting. The in Islam, I don't think if people don't know what nikah is, maybe you can explain a little bit about like with the sort of your list of things that you want in your marriage, because there's a lot of people who are sort of on the red pill fence, if you will. They're sort of teetering on that fence, and they're saying, well, you know, we need a prenup, and I think that's sort of built into the process of getting married in Islam. Is that true?
So we have something called the nikah contract in Islam, where both both the man and the woman can put in their conditions for marriage in it. So like you could do that, and also like when you get divorced in Islam, right? The woman is not allowed to take like half of the man's wealth, right?
Right.
You leave with what you win. So I think that's another thing. Like a lot of what they talk about like in the red pill community, I don't think it really applies like within the Muslim community.
Right.
Like obviously I get that it might be different in the West because they go to like these legal courts for separation and stuff like that, right?
Right. Exactly.
But like a believing woman wouldn't like want to like take half of the man's wealth. Like if they still want to get a prenup, they can, I guess, because I've heard of like wealthy men as well as wealthy women getting it to protect their assets. Like if they want to get it, then why not? You know, like I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Right, but that is interesting though that it's also built in the into the if you have a nikah contract that you are not allowed to leave, you can't take his. I mean, I think this with the big part of this red pill influencer that I mentioned earlier was I want my son to be wealthy, and I don't want some girl that he's slept with, you know, a few times and you know had a baby to take half his wealth. And I think that's his probably one of his worries, but I think Islam solves that problem, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course, because you're in control of your desires. You are vetting and verifying a potential woman, like to be your wife and to be like the mother of your children. So you're not sleeping with someone and you're not having kids before marriage, right? So there's a couple of months where you like vet and verify, and after that, that is when you get married. So I think that like you like deliberate, like it's very deliberate, you know, choosing the father or the mother of your children, right? It's not something
Inshallah.
Yeah. So I think I don't really think it applies to us.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's one of the another blessing of Islam, alhamdulillah for that. Is there anything that else you want to talk about in terms of liberalism and secularism and maybe feminism or the red pill community that we haven't touched upon in this episode?
So something that I noticed like within my own matchmaking agency and just talking to people who are like looking to get married, like it's definitely more difficult to find a suitable spouse if you are following the religion the way it's supposed to be followed, and if you are seeking like a marriage, like a traditional marriage, right? Like if you're a liberal, like it's gonna be way more easier for you to get married. Because like I said, feminism doesn't just affect women, right? Like there's male feminists out there as well.
Yes, exactly.
So I would say like there's a dual attack on masculinity because they have both red pill and feminism that are like kind of like attacking them.
No, beautiful.
So there is this one thing that it's definitely difficult for people who are seeking traditional marriages. Like it's definitely more difficult for them out there. And this is not to like discourage anyone, but just giving everybody like a reality check, you know?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and the other one I would say is how delaying marriages. I'm not saying that people who are not married beyond a certain age have been deliberately delaying it.
Of
I mean,
course.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what it is. And I know some people who've been trying, but they haven't been successful. At the end of the day, like this world is a test and all of us are going to be tested in different ways, right?
That's right.
But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't like, I think people underestimate how much time it takes to find a good spouse.
Yes. That's
they think like, oh, I'm gonna start I know like men think like, oh, like I'm gonna get married after I'm like 30 or 35 and I like that's my prime and I'm gonna accumulate XYZ wealth and everything.
right.
But like if you think like you just turn 30 and then you just start looking and a month or two later you get married, that's not like it takes time, you know, like Inshallah it doesn't take like a lot of time, but it does take time, you know.
Of course.
For women as well, obviously like we touched upon how like it affects female fertility as well, having kids like later on.
A lot of people don't really understand biology, unfortunately. And I think, you know, that's probably by design. But also the fact that, you know, it's very rare to get pregnant the first time you're intimate with your husband. And I feel like, I mean, it can take years to actually have a successful pregnancy. I mean, literally years. I mean, infertility is a worldwide problem. And I think that if you get married at 32, you know, you're trying for 3 years, you're seeing endocrinologists or doctors. I mean, this is a huge thing that a lot of people think that they can put off. A lot of women think that they can put off for their careers. And then at 35, 36, they're like, oh, I can't get pregnant. So now what are my options? And IVF is a very expensive process. It's a very emotionally taxing process. It's
also painful.
It's painful. Yes, it is painful. And so people don't really think, well, I'll just put it off and I'll just use, you know, reproductive technology. And it's like, but there's no guarantees. You can spend all of that money, you can spend all that time, you're putting your body through that process and still come out with nothing.
And I think because they're delaying having a kid, they also take birth control that like messes up their entire reproductive system, right? So that is there as well, and you're like completely on point with how people underestimate how difficult it is to like get pregnant, right? Especially in this day and age where we have so many like lifestyle, like people are not working out, they're not eating healthy,
right?
Like the food is messed up. Like if you like took a certain vaccine, then that's gonna mess up your chances as well, you know.
A lot of people are very invested in solving this issue. It's everywhere, and you never know. There's not one specific thing, right? But delaying that until you're 30, in your late 30s or early 30s, I mean, your fertility as a woman drops drastically. And like you said, your mom was lucky enough that she had a baby in her early 40s, but
it was very complicated, and
it was very complicated. Yeah, and a lot of people don't. Oh, well, I'm 32. I'm 36. I mean, that's still really late. That's still, you know, that is considered late motherhood.
I mean, like, and the female biological clock is definitely more time sensitive. You know, like we don't want to hear it, but it's true.
No, that's very right. If you say that, you know, you're extreme or you're on a certain side, which is absolutely not true. It is we are designed that way from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that just the way it is. That's something we have to accept. And it points to why our deen, you know, let's get married early, let's have babies early, then we won't have to worry about our fertility clock, you know, our clock ticking or expiring, if you know. So
again, we like don't want to like sound like we're like we're red pill or anything. I'm not saying that women, you know, like expire after 22 or you won't have like, or you
I'm not saying 22 at all.
What you're saying. Like you can obviously have kids in your like 20s and even like early to mid 30s, but you're saying that you should prioritize it.
Exactly.
It's easier for the body, right?
Yeah.
And it's easier to like conceive and it's easier to raise those kids.
Raise them,
like,
exactly.
Risks are not worth it, you know. I've seen women in my family go through it, so it's not worth
absolutely. It. No, absolutely. And Jazakallah for clarifying that. Yeah, no, definitely not. But I think that I'm not saying 22. I mean, if you're lucky enough to get married at that age and inshallah you have children, you know, very fertile and able to get pregnant, you know, early on, that's absolutely wonderful. But unfortunately, that's just not the case for most women. They're delaying their pregnancies, they're delaying marriage for whatever reason. And so
I hope
alhamdulillah.
at least some of them will watch this video and like kind of
Mhm.
wake up and like not have any
Inshallah. Yeah,
I just don't want any women to have regrets later on, you know. So
exactly.
hopefully like this makes you stop and just think about it for a second, you know.
Yeah, the reprioritize, look back to the deen, the tradition, and see, how is my life going? And, what do I want? What do I really want? Is being a boss babe and owning my own, lash business, is that going to make me a better mother? I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is. It might make you feel good because you're working with clients and you're doing that thing and you're independent, but I don't know if that's necessarily, you want to think about, how am I going to raise my children and how am I going to be a good wife? And I think, inshallah, we can talk about that. What does a traditional Muslim marriage look like? And I think a lot of people just don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, we can go into that later. And also like to just go into a little bit about what you said.
Mhm.
Like if you want to have a business, like you can have that
Of course,
after you
of
get
course.
married.
Mhm.
And you can do that like when you're pregnant or after you have kids,
Yeah, of
But
course.
like, but if you're in a 9 to 5, I think what they have like a 6 months maternity leave, and then you have to like leave your kids and like,
Yeah.
just go back into
Right.
the corporate machine, and somebody else is raising your kids. Somebody else is raising the next generation. God knows what they're teaching them.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so like
And you can't trust. Yeah.
we gotta
Having somebody
prioritize.
else raise your child just seems so strange to me, and being raised by babysitters myself, it's just like, you're also putting your child at risk of like all sorts of dangerous and pernicious things. Yeah.
Like I'm beyond glad that my mom was like a stay-at-home mother, right?
Alhamdulillah.
So like so like obviously I went to school, but then like whenever we came back home, she was there, and we would like talk about all of these Islamic studies and stuff like that. So I think that in itself made a huge difference, like having her at home. And then when I hear like some of my friends talk about how their moms work, and I'm like, I don't know, like home is not home without my mom, like I cannot imagine like not having my mom around, so
Yeah.
and I just hope that other children get to like experience that as well,
Yeah, absolutely. 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 I totally agree with you. Is there anything else, Bushra?
I think we pretty much covered all of it, and I'm just gonna like round it up by saying that at the end of the day, nothing will bring you as much satisfaction as being a wife and like raising your children. Like no job, like even if you're like earning like a big fat 6-figure check and all of that, it will not give you the satisfaction and fulfillment that comes with doing what you were like created to do by God. So,
Absolutely.
I think that's pretty much it from my side.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, everyone, for watching, and inshallah this helps you understand sort of the sort of causes of the Muslim marriage crisis, and we're going to dive into some other topics, and inshallah you guys will check those out as well.